Hey folks, this is Ben Yessel. I'm at least making one more video tonight. Um, so, before I forget this guy's name, there's a gentleman that you guys need to check out. His name is Param Sirikantia. I think it's Param, last name Srikantia. I think he's a professor over at Syracuse University or something like that. From India, I believe. So he has some really great stuff to mention. Um, anyway, so this video is about a little more, well, might go for, I'm probably going to talk about a few different things, not just one thing. So it might be a little bit wandering, but hopefully you guys get some stuff out of this. When I was growing up, just in terms of health and nutrition, I got plenty of exercise and was very regular in my sleeping patterns. And I tended to have a certain diet that, of course, I think was pretty good. But, back in the 80s, basically, my parents had a little bit different idea than they do now about what is healthy, or there was a lot of emphasis on grains and just we turned from 4 to 5 food groups, but we had a fair bit of cereal with milk and sandwiches and stuff. I think a lot of people still do. But I was very active, so I tended to burn those calories pretty well. We really didn't have very much meat, is the thing. I found personally that maybe if I increase my if I were to be more active, maybe I would need a bit more of that stuff. But I've found that, I mean, having a few skinless organic chicken thighs at one meal, along with some other stuff, and having a steak and with potatoes or some other stuff at another meal, two meats in a day is plenty. I guess it's just I continue to find that, particularly with poultry meat, that you just don't need very much of that stuff to live, unless you're really physically active and you're a really big person, really big guy, lots of muscle. I mean, you just don't need that stuff. It's tasty, it's true, it's filling, but other meals you can have fish or eggs or avocado or potatoes. You can have meatless meals, and it's probably a good idea to have them. Anyway, there's a lot on my mind, and I do apologize if I don't get to everything. Apologize for myself, but I'll try to get to everything in my mind here. But again, looking at how things were when I was younger, we always had a lot of apples and oranges and bananas, those three, and not really a heck of a lot of other types of fruits, and that's okay. I like having one or two other kinds of fruits, but basically, if you're not talking about summer, if you're talking about other months, it's going to be hard to find those other fruits. You can't do stuff, but it's just going to be a little bit more hit and miss in terms of the quality of those kinds of fruits. Again, I know I'm talking about the temperate regions of the United States, or at least I'm talking about the Northwest in particular, but there's always plenty of vegetables you can eat. When I was growing up, it was a struggle to get those vegetables in. It's less of a struggle now. But I tell you what, folks, I think, I don't know. I'm always going to try to eat my vegetables. There'll be times that I probably will have a little bit less of them than other times. And, I still like spinach. But spinach is, you know, some of these vegetables, Brussels sprouts is more what I'm talking about, but some vegetables you just have to get better at knowing how to prepare them. Spinach can taste so nutty, have kind of a bitter aftertaste. It can be hard to stomach in a way. I'm talking about not baby spinach, but the more robust, nuttier, earthier flavored spinach. But Brussels sprouts for me is just, it's just, I don't know. I can have some of them. I can have several Brussels sprouts, but there's a limit to my Brussels sprout, I think, intake in one sitting. Probably a dozen or so Brussels sprouts is more than enough for me, I think. But anyway, that all being said, yeah, I guess it's just there was a long time in my life when I didn't have glutinous breads in large quantities. And I'm still going to do that. Still having that kind of thing in my diet. And also, there was a fair bit of time a while back when I didn't have very much rice, or here and there. It's still kind of the case, And on top of that, if I had fruit, I didn't have a lot of potatoes. It's turning into more of a half fruit, half potato thing in that regard, starches, with bananas being less commonly eaten, but here and there. But the thing is that my body's sometimes saying, you've had enough starches for today. And that's especially the case with real whole foods with fiber. If it's juice is, the sweeter the juice, the more my body wants it. And I just know that if I have a bunch of that sweeter juice or soda, it's not good for me. So, if I have sweeter juice, I have to have some fiber or some protein for it to have the blood sugar not spike. To not have my blood sugar spike so much. And yeah, so, I think, if you have, it's like when you have something really super sweet, the crazy thing is I was even having these really somewhat healthier fruit chews from PCC Natural Markets. They're really good. I'd recommend them. Fruities, something like that. Because they had, I think, more real fruit to them. It wasn't like I was eating candy. It was a lot better than Starburst. It was healthier. It actually has vitamin C. It's like real fruit stuff in it. But it's still kind of sweet and candy-ish in a way. But heck, it's just, I don't know. I think it's just there are some foods that help you know when you've had enough of something. Other foods encourage overeating. I can't stress that point enough. And when you eat whole fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds somewhat as well, and beans and things, but especially whole fruits and vegetables. It just they help you know when you've had enough of something. Yeah. How do you know when you've had enough animal protein? I mean, like, maybe I could tomorrow. At least tomorrow, I'm gonna probably have some leftover short ribs and potatoes and things. But I was thinking about doing having some boiled eggs tomorrow, hard-boiled eggs. How do you know my limit? For instance, my limit per meal is 4, but that's still a fair bit. How do you know when you've had enough animal protein? If you have it's more calorie dense, so it can kind of eating too much meat usually occurs when you focus on meat, right? If you eat a lot of other foods, grains and I don't know, fruits and stuff and nuts and whatever, if you eat more filling plant foods, it's easier not to overdo it on the meat. But if you just eat mostly meat, a lot of meat, it's easier to overdo it. It's hard on your kidneys. I mean, like the way you feel after you eat beef. I mean, there's a lot of great things about red meat, for guys, testosterone stuff, right? Sure, but it's a fundamentally different kind of food than plant foods. It will, yeah, I don't know. It's just you feel different. It's not you don't feel unhealthy, but your stomach is digesting that meat for a long time, right? It's just this heavy food, heavy, right? So if I think it's great to have meat, but it's just like mix it up with other stuff like celery and carrots, a little bit of egg, apple. When you have a whole big steak, like bigger than a deck of cards, like 2 or 3 decks of cards in one sitting, you're gonna want to take a nap, especially if you're older, past a certain age, especially. If you're younger, you still want to. Red meat is not immediately go out and exercise food. It's, whoa, let me take it easy for a bit, then I'll exercise, right? What do you eat before lifting weights if you want extra protein? You can eat a steak, but I would think that maybe with that steak you want some eggs, maybe an avocado or something, potatoes. You need some carbs. Carbs help with the immediate energy kinds of things. Anyway, so I'm going to try to sum up this train of thought here in general. It's, I sometimes think that um, it's good to get stuff at the grocery store that's cheaper. I've always mentioned this, but it's just that there are a lot of things that are cheaper that are not especially healthy. But more important than that, it's important that we all know what the effects are for us regarding certain foods. It should be known now that when you eat refined white bread, and that's most of the bread that's sold, and the stuff that's multigrain or whatever else isn't necessarily fully real grains. I mean, or whole grains. It's like more like a mix. There's still a fair amount of white bread content in that stuff. It has to be 100% stone ground whole wheat bread, and even that stuff has gluten. And gluten is not good for your body. So I mean, like, I don't know. I think when it comes to grains, rice, starches, it's rice and potatoes and plantains, bananas, organic corn. Some people would say corn would be off the list. I'd say it has to be organic, non-GMO. Blue corn and stuff is fine too. Or taro is fine. Also quinoa and I don't eat quinoa myself, but it's great. Amaranth is fine. Millet I think is fine. But the wheat and the oats, and especially the white refined stuff in that respect. Plus, of course, barley, rye, spelt, these kinds of glutinous grains should be in lower quantities. What happens when you have a lot of dough, like you eat a lot of Italian food? Well, you're gonna want to go to sleep. It's heavy food. You're getting white bread or white floury stuff, right? You're getting the cheese. You're getting and the meat. And like, I don't know, man. Like John Travolta, Saturday Night Live. walking down the streets of New York City with this pizza in hand. You can do that when you're 20. You can even do that when you're 50. Can you do that when you're 70 or 80? Have that energy? Eating pizza like that? Come on. At some point, you need to go to a salad route or like something different. Change up the grains you're eating. People make squash pasta. I'm not saying it's as tasty, but I don't know. It's like what grains do is grains are great because they're cheap. They're cheap like beans and seeds and vegetables, and they're great energy sources. It's true, but they're overrated. They're often overdone because they are so cheap. And I understand, a lot of times families need to rely on these kinds of foods. They can't rely on vegetables because vegetables aren't as tasty. They just won't be eaten as much. Somewhat, maybe, sure. But grains will be eaten along with cheaper dairy and beans somewhat. And fruit, it's cheaper, But it's just so easy to overdo the cheap stuff. That isn't necessarily as healthy, or we think it's healthy, but and glutinous grains slow you down. Like come up your system. They're not good for your gut. The glutinous stuff, as well as the dairy. I've been off that stuff largely for a long, long time. I don't want to think about what my health would be like if I had kept eating lots of dairy. Although there are things that are worse than that. I mean, yeah. Okay, I'm going to try to jump into some other stuff here for a bit. At least one other topic, maybe. Just, it's so easy to get in a rut of any sort. It's hard to get out of ruts sometimes. It doesn't matter how many ruts you've gotten out of in the past. And one of the things I want to do in my life this coming year, is I want to just try to get out of ruts that I don't need to be in. Try new things, do new things. Just try to live life more. Try to be more around positive people. Stand up for myself more. Be more assertive about a lot of things. I've lived life enough to know what sorts of things I think would bring me more joy and what sorts of things wouldn't. I still know that there's a lot of things I haven't figured out yet, but I know that you just learn about more things over time. Yeah. Anyway, I'll sum up this video soon, but that's very much something I want to be taking more seriously, I suppose. Anyway, so I just want to say one more thing. It's true. I mean, there's some vegetables like green onions and onions in general. The Hellion family, I love that stuff. I feel like if they cook that stuff, it's just green onions are amazing. But I think it's important that that we understand that fruits and vegetables, along with water, are the healthiest things for our bodies. And we don't have to have the stuff that we grew up with. We can have some of that stuff that we're more used to, but we can also try other stuff. I mean, I've had a hard time finding watercress, but watercress really is amazing stuff. It's not like thick and dense like collard greens. You can just put it on top of stuff and just eat it almost like raw. It's great. Green onions are somewhat like that. You want to cook them a little bit, but yeah. I mean, so try to get your greens in there, and check out that gentleman again on TED Talks. I recommend him. Listening to his stuff, and I'll catch you guys later. Take care. Bye.